Right, guys. So very much a warm welcome to everybody, especially to Corey, our second guest for this cohort. I'm very, very excited for you guys to meet Corey. Some of you might have come across his work before. Um, Corey and I met now, what is it? 4 years ago, 2021, right?
Give or take, yeah.
Yeah. So we met 4 years ago in the height of COVID, when we did a writing course. We did a writing course together. Um, and I remember there were tons of people on this course. And you really stood out because you were one of the first, like you hit me up straight away. You're like, oh, come on, man, we need to talk. And ever since then, like I would consider you one of my best friends I've never met. That's probably the best way to describe it. One day we're going to
Same.
make it happen. So for we've got some of the dads that are on the call. They're building businesses. They are creating content. They're growing an audience. And I know money is going to be part of the equation, but the biggest thing is the people that you meet on that journey, right? So Corey had some sort of business angle when you started. I had none at all. But meeting you was worth all the pain of tweeting into the void for a year. So it was so good. Right. Anyway, so what we've got here, we've got a group of 24, 25 dads. Obviously, a bit of a smaller turnout tonight. But as I said, we'll record this, and I've heard already from the few that have, or from the guys who have already responded saying, "Sorry, can't make it. But I'm very much looking forward to listening to what Corey has to say." Because obviously, I've heard you talk a few times on fear, on giving ourselves permission to exceed, to excel. But before I go too far with all of that, Corey, why don't you give the good people a bit of a intro into who you are and what you do?
Sure. So by training, I'm a psychologist, although not many people call me Dr. Corey Wilks anymore. But by training, I'm a psychologist. I formerly specialized in addiction treatment, working in integrated primary care in rural Appalachia, which is a mouthful. All it means is I worked alongside physicians helping people with like mental health shit. During COVID, I got laid off and realized I was burnout doing therapy. And I was like, well, I spent 12 years of my life to become a psychologist and I am no longer trying to do therapy. What do I do with my life? And I realized entrepreneurship was the route. So I didn't have any business training. Like I grew up on like food stamps, public housing, so super poor. I didn't know any entrepreneurs. I didn't have any connections, nothing. I literally had to Google how to start an LLC and learned, copywriting, marketing, how to spin up a WordPress website, offer creation, how to invoice, all that was just Googling and YouTubing and thankfully coming across a small handful of people who shared their lessons with me. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years. Now I primarily do executive coaching with founders and entrepreneurs. I've worked with New York Times bestselling authors, YouTubers with millions of subscribers, founders of eight-figure companies, scaling them to nine and 10. That's a lot of what I do day to day now. In addition, I write a lot. I have some live programs I run. I mentioned at the top of this call, I run a 6-week program right now called The Alchemy of Fear. It's all around just like transforming your relationship with fear and things. And this is the third cohort that I just got off a call with that. But a lot of what I do is one-on-one coaching, small group coaching. And then I share what I learn through my writing, through my podcast. Toby's been on my podcast. We had a great conversation. So that's a lot of what I do now.
Awesome. Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And I want to just dive straight in because one of the concepts that I think was born in Rite of Passage, so Rite of Passage was the course that we took together, was the Four Horsemen of Fear. And I think that is, I remember first speaking to you about that because it was a concept you'd come up with, and it just screams Corey. Like as soon as you started talking about it, it was you. Um, so do you want to talk us through like what are the Four Horsemen of Fear? And let's take it from there.
Sure. So like I kind of touched on, I've worked with everybody from like aspiring solopreneurs and content creators just starting out to people who are seasoned veterans. I've worked with bootstrap people, VC backed people, all this. And what I consistently found was, a lot of us like to think that lack of money, resources, or intelligence are the things holding us back. But in reality, like as long as you have like an internet connection, you can figure it out well enough to get started. What actually holds people back is fear and limiting beliefs. Now, what I found was that most of these limiting beliefs fell into one of four categories. Again, regardless of how new or seasoned you were. And I called them the four horsemen of fear. First one was fear of failure. And this one basically, this is one everybody's familiar with. What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not smart enough? What if nobody buys? What if nobody watches? What if this fails? And a lot of times this kind of tricks us into never even starting. Because why would you start something that you know is going to fail? The second one is fear of ridicule. And this one basically says, well, what will they think? How will my friends and family respond if I do this? Well, if I put this, idea out there, if I put myself out there, maybe trolls will come after me. Maybe I'll get online hate. Even if I do everything right and I have good intentions, people, the mob may still come after me. So that a lot of times tricks us into just staying small, not putting ourselves and our ideas out there. The third one is fear of uncertainty. And this is basically where we feel like we're at a fork in the road and we don't know which direction to go. So we think we need to feel ready before we take a step forward. So this is where like analysis paralysis comes in, endless research of like, okay, well, what is the best route? Let me do a pro con list. Let me do a little bit more research. Well, let me ask this other person. Well, what do you think I should do? And we try to find the best route before we even take a step forward. And this often just kind of traps us in this analysis paralysis cycle because we never feel ready and we will never feel ready. But we think we need to feel ready before we start. And the fourth one, which trips up a lot of people, that doesn't make sense at first, which is fear of success. And you may think, well, Corey, why would I be afraid to achieve the thing I claim to want? Like, I want to be successful. How could I be afraid of success? For most of us, if you've never achieved major success, the only version of you understand is pre-success. So achieving success a lot of times represents crossing a threshold into this post-success version of you. Well, if you've never crossed that threshold, you don't know what that looks like. Common things I've heard from clients are things like, well, Corey, I've been the underdog my entire life. If I succeed, I won't be the underdog anymore. And that has always been my superpower. I'm afraid if I succeed, I will lose that superpower, that competitive edge, and maybe I won't be able to continue. I'll lose the thing that makes me special. Other people have said, if I do what I know I need to do to succeed at the level I know I'm capable of, my friends and family may not come along for the ride. They may leave me. So for me, success represents ending up alone, and that terrifies me. What if I become niche famous? One of the founders I worked with, he's a tech founder, and he said, I'm just a guy. I'm afraid if this thing actually blows up, I will become niche famous in my little area, and people will put too much stock in my opinions and my words. And I don't want that because I'm afraid of the whole power corrupts kind of deal. I'm afraid to have that level of power and influence. I don't want that. Well, when fear of success kind of trips you up, what that ends up oftentimes causing is you have a track record for doing really, really well. And then right when you're on like the edge of like real victory or you're getting ready to hit real traction, something always happens. You always kind of pull back, you self-sabotage, something that prevents you from crossing that threshold into like real success. Or like one of the things that I've written about on my website is I always growing up identified as a poor kid. Everybody I knew was poor. Like all my childhood friends are like either in prison or in and out of prison or dead. Just the crowd I ran with. And everybody I knew, same deal. We're all poor, we're all, delinquents or felony behavior, whatever, allegedly. So when I thought about when I started my business, I was like, oh, maybe I'm afraid of failing. But then I realized, well, if I fail, all that means is I'll just go back to being a poor kid. I'm not actually afraid of failing. What I'm afraid of is succeeding because success would mean losing my identity as the poor kid. And the poor kid is all I've ever known. Being a poor kid is all I've ever been. Who am I if I'm not the poor kid anymore? So there's a lot of identity issues, identity work, and just sort of like meaning making that gets wrapped up in the sphere of success, if that is an issue. So these are the four horsemen of fear. And most of the time, we may not necessarily be aware of these horsemen, but we are aware of the self-sabotaging behaviors we engage in that actually help us avoid the horsemen. So, for example, a lot of people talk about how, oh, Corey, I just really struggle with procrastination. I've learned all the productivity stuff. I've taken the courses. I've read the books. I know how to do an Eisenhower matrix or the 80-20 or Pomodoro, time blocking. I know how to do all that, but I continue to procrastinate. Why? Well, at that point, the reason you procrastinate likely is because procrastination at that point is just a fear avoidance strategy. Because if you have this offer, so we're talking about business, if you have this offer you want to put out, or you're building this business you want to start, the longer you procrastinate, the longer you can avoid risking putting this thing out there and it failing, or people judging you, or you succeeding and maybe losing your identity or your competitive advantage or whatever. So at that point, procrastination isn't your issue. Avoiding the thing you're afraid of becomes your issue, which is why all this productivity shit doesn't work. That's one of the most common things I hear from people is like, hey, Corey, I know all the productivity stuff. None of it's working. Why? It isn't a lack of productivity at that point. It's more of like an abundance of fear that you need to deal with. So that's really where I come in when I help founders and things is what are the fears or the limiting beliefs kind of holding you back? How can we really dig into them so that you can move forward? So yeah, that's my spiel on the four horsemen.
Love it. Very, very powerful. Um, I'd like to pick up on the fourth one. So when you were talking about the identity of the poor kid, which is quite powerful, I think there's an element where as a child you have an identity, and I think there's a lot to dig into in terms of you're changing that narrative, right? You're changing the narrative of being the poor kid, but to allow yourself to succeed. And we'll get into that a bit later, but one thing that strikes me when I look into the room here, and I know who's here, and I know what they're struggling with, is to think, what if you're not identifying with that kid version anymore because you are a dad now and you're holding down a 9 to 5. Some of the guys here are building additional businesses, or they're trying to either have a side hustle or have a 9 to 5 kind of exit. So kind of firing their 9 to 5 and building their own. But there's obviously that identity piece that you've now had. And even if it's self-limiting, it is still secure because you still feel this is me. I am this guy who does this job. I am the guy who doesn't do X, Y, Z. When you have conversations like that, what are like methods or techniques or tools that you say or you tell people would be useful to use to shift this identity piece to actually go, do you know what? This is your old identity. This is something we can do to now create a new identity.
One question I would probably start with is what are the beliefs you kind of carry around with you day to day? So, for example, one of the founders I'm working with, he's built 8-figure company. And he's like, hey, if I could overcome my fear of success, I could build $1 billion portfolio. He's like, I've hired a bunch of other mindset coaches. I've done all this. I've done all that. None of it's fucking worked. So one of the first things we did was looking at what are the beliefs you carry around? Well, one of the beliefs maybe is you can't trust people. One of the beliefs maybe is the fact that you're always counted out has been your fuel historically. So you need to feel adversity. You need to feel that the odds are stacked against you because that has been your fuel your entire life. If you succeed, that won't be the case anymore. So how do you find a new more healthier, more holistic fuel source so that you don't have to create adversity. Because that was one of the patterns he found. He was like, I make shit harder than it needs to be because I'm so used to drama. I'm so used to adversity that when there isn't adversity, or when I think about slowing down and being more intentional, it feels like I'm losing all of my fuel. So anytime I start to, shit starts to go really well and it feels smooth, I'm like, this isn't working. It needs to be more dramatic, more just harder. And when it isn't harder, I make it harder. But making it harder makes it harder. So it slows my progress and it actually holds me back from doing the thing I say I want to do. So I was like, okay, let's look at, why do you feel the need to make things harder? Oh, fuel source. Okay, cool. What's a better fuel source? What is the future version of you? What fuel source does he use? What is the difference between you today and him? Not like outward appearances, but internally. What are the thoughts that go through his head? What are the stories he tells himself? What is his relationship to success and showing up that is different than yours today? And once you can start to identify those, now you have goals. Now you have, how do I cultivate this internal thought? How do I change my narrative to more align with this one? Right. That is usually the first step um, for that specific situation.
Mm. Yeah, can definitely see a lot of people relating with that sense of um, yeah, holding yourself back, and in particular that you're identifying with somebody, and oftentimes when I speak to people um, on the one-to-one basis, we often talk about the permission, right? So permission piece of saying, actually, I am allowing myself to be successful, which is much easier said than done because you're identifying sometimes, as you said, just either with the struggle or also with the kind of lesser version of yourself, right? And you can see that, I guess, oftentimes with people when they're struggling with weight issues, right? So it's a yo-yoing effect because you know it's safe. Yes, you hate it, but it's safe. So you just never allow yourself to drop more than 10 pounds before you bounce back again. And that's obviously like a fairly common issue there. Um, in the course that I have for the dads here. So one of the first things we do is we look at vision and creating a clear vision for their lives. And I think when you first for most men anyway, I find that really looking at a personal vision for yourself is something people tend to not really think about, right? We either think of like it's going to just appear or it's going to be handed to me, but not in terms of I need to create it for myself because, in the movies people just have a vision and then why don't I have one? But when so many men struggle to create a kind of clear vision for their lives, what would you say? How can they tell if the vision is truly theirs and not something that was externally instilled on them? How do they really know, okay, this is truly who I want to be?
A question I have spent literally over 6 months asking in one-on-one coaching before is, what do you want? Sounds stupid. It's like fucking, I know what I want. I want to be buff. I want to have a lot of money. I want to have a second house. I want to travel the world. Okay. Maybe. But are those things that you actually want, or are those things that you think you're supposed to want? Or are those things you think you're supposed to want to strive toward? So how much of the things that you think you want are inherited by your family, your culture, your upbringing, your job, current ways of the world, whatever? And how many of them are actually what you yourself want, regardless of everything else going on? And that's really, really hard to answer for most people because we struggle to give ourselves permission to ask that question of, okay, what do I want? Not just duty or obligation or responsibility, which are all factors for sure, especially, dads and shit. But you yourself, what do you want? Meaning, what do you want your life to look like? What impact do you want to have? How do you want to express yourself creatively, entrepreneurially, romantically, whatever? What does that actually mean for you? Right. And especially like as guys, right? Because like I never get to have just a call with just all guys, right? I always have to like be a little more diverse in my shit. But as guys, especially like traditional masculinity scripts and shit, right? We're kind of bound by like honor and duty and responsibility and things. Not a bad thing. But, primarily, at least the way I was raised, I'll speak for myself. The way I was raised, your role is to provide and protect. Fundamentally, provide and protect. Provide, maybe you're the breadwinner, right? It also may be you're the one that like builds the shit or fixes the shit or lifts the heavy things. And protect, right? Obviously, big, strong, me man, right? You threat, me whack you. That is how a lot of us are raised. And there's a lot of honor in that. But it's like, okay, within that though, what do you want? How do you want to show up in the world? What do you want to build or put out there? That's a really hard question for a lot of us to answer because we spent our entire lives going with the flow, wanting the things we're told we're supposed to want, striving for the things we're told we're supposed to strive toward, that we never really factor in what do I personally want? Right. And like, Toby, one of your things that we talked about, I think, when I had you on the podcast was like, you from an early age wanted a big family because you came from a small family. Right. And the size of family you want isn't a common size anymore. Right.
It's true.
Like this isn't like Oregon Trail days or like on the prairie days or some shit so my grandparents, both my grandma and grandpa, have like they are one of like 12 or 13. So each of them have like a dozen siblings. I have never seen, and we're not Catholic. I've never seen that size in my generation. Right. Obviously, Toby, you're not there yet, but halfway there. Right. That was the thing that you were like, this is what I want for my personal reasons, not because other people are telling me this. In fact, a lot of people are like, buddy, that's too many, but I want this for my reasons. Right. And this is such a great way to go about life of like knowing what you want personally. But it's a really, really hard question to answer. What do you actually want?
Yeah. Um, I'm laughing because it reminds me, I this weekend, I was away with a group of guys, and one of the guys, that his parting words were "No more kids," because we'd seen each other before, and since we saw each other last time, I had another one, so that was just like no more kids. Yeah, I like it. I think what one, and I would like to hear your take on that, but I think one of the big issues of our time, if we can go that far, is the lack of or training or upbringing in terms of tuning into our intuition, right? Tuning into our gut instincts, because it's all so heavily focused on data. It's also heavily kind of programmed out, and we need to just follow the rules and all of that stuff. Um, but if I think of hiring practices, now obviously you don't want to go for people that are totally unqualified for a job. But I have found it many times to be true that I would sit in an interview and I would have somebody who on paper is way more qualified than another person, but my gut told me to go with the other person. And when I listened to my gut, it was a better decision, 100%, right? So I think this kind of feels for me is part of that equation is for people when they're looking at their vision to also just say, maybe just stop thinking for a bit. Maybe just sit with the question and then just see what emerges rather than just constantly just probe and constantly just do. Um, so is that something that you have with your clients as well, where especially I guess in tech, and you've got people that are more or less spending their whole lives at a computer, where you actually just need to say, look, just get out, get away from this for a bit.
One of the I don't really give like a lot of homework or exercises and shit, but one of the things I will frequently recommend is to take like 20 to 60 minutes, go somewhere by yourself with a pen and paper and contemplate shit like this. What do I actually want? What is actually holding me back? What do I actually need to do to move forward on the things I say I want to do? Because most of the time you'll realize you might have a decent idea of what you actually want to do, but you've been either waiting for permission from somebody else to do it because maybe you don't trust yourself, or you think that the thing you actually want to do is either too grandiose, too selfish, or too small to be valid. You will realize the thing that's actually holding you back is you. You're overcomplicating it. You're overthinking it. You're discounting your ability to do it. Some other kind of shit. You're waiting until, one of the guys I know, he was like, he's mid-30s. He was like, when I turn 40, I'll get, this inheritance, this is a small inheritance. And I'll start a brewery. I've always wanted to start a brewery. I know everything about it. I've even done some like micro brews, like in my basement and shit. And I really, really want to do that. I'm tired of working this job. So when I turn 40, that is what I'll do. I've already got the place scoped out. I've got business plans, whatever. Well, he got his inheritance like 2 years early. And I was like, hey, man, how's that brewery turn out? He's like, oh, when I got the inheritance, I just, I paid off some of my old debt. I put a bunch into savings and I'm not ready yet. He gets in his own way. Most of us, the thing actually in our own way is us. It's not because it's too hard. You can figure it out. You're plenty smart, not too complicated. You can figure out an MVP version of it. It is our own self-doubt, limiting beliefs, waiting for permission, something to that degree. It's usually us in our own way. But that means it's within our control to get the fuck out of our own way. Because if I'm in my own way, that means it's within my control to move. But until I identify that I'm the problem, I can't fix the problem. Because if I say, oh, the reason I can't, I identify the thing I really want to do. Oh, but it's too hard. I'm too old. I'm too young. I sunk cost. I've spent too long in this other industry. I can't make this change. That's all you, your own beliefs, your own thoughts, your own narratives. That's not reality. It's you. But until you realize that, there's nothing to solve for because you can't solve for age. I'm like, oh, I'm too old. Well, okay, I guess then just wait to die. I don't know. I don't know what you want me to tell you, right? Like you're too old. Okay. There's nothing to solve for. Versus I have this belief that I am too old. And based on that belief, I choose inaction. Oh, this is a thing I can solve for. How do I reframe or rewrite some of these beliefs, some of these scripts, some of these narratives to actually serve me rather than hold me back? Okay. And then what do you actually need to do to move forward? It seems like, it could seem like some hippy dippy, like woo woo journal practice or whatever, but it's super, super powerful because most of us, think about it this way. When you're in the shower and when you're laying down to go to bed are probably the times you think the most and you have, shower thoughts. You have interesting thoughts. You have maybe some breakthroughs, some insights. Or if you have like a long commute, that's like a normal route. That's when you have a lot of ideas. The reason for that is those are the few times during the day where you're not reactive. You're not in a reactive mode or mindset of, let me answer this email. Let me deal with this, kid issue. Let me do this. Let me do that. Your brain is always trying to put out all these like little fires. So you stay in a reactive mindset. But when you actually slow down to take a shower, normal commute, lay down for bed, now finally your brain is like, oh, I have room to allow some of these ideas to percolate to the surface. I have the space to just wander and think about things and make all these connections and for these insights to kind of come up because I haven't had that opportunity all day long. Most of us just aren't intentional with creating that space and that time for ourselves. So doing like 20, 60 minutes by yourself, music or not, I don't give a shit, whatever works. Pen and paper. Because if you do it on a computer, you're going to try to Google shit. And then you're going to get distracted. Then 40 minutes later, you're like, fuck, what was I doing? Pen and paper. There's no pop-ups on pen and paper. There's no Googling on pen and paper. And just like sitting there in contemplation by yourself. It's like that Blaise Pascal quote or whatever um, about men's inability to like sit alone with himself in a room is basically the source of all his problems. So like just developing the skill to sit by yourself with your thoughts and contemplate these things. That's where all this clarity and shit's going to come out. So that's usually where I start.
Yeah, very good. Very, very powerful. Um, in a few minutes, guys, if you want, if you have questions, maybe just think about it. I've got enough questions to last us another 3 hours. But if you want to have questions, if you want to say something, just put up your digital hand, and we'll invite you in. It'll be good to hear from you. Um, one I do want to touch on again, one of the four fears, which is the fear of ridicule, um, which could also, I guess, be rephrased as the fear of judgment, right? So if, again, looking around the room, knowing who's in this group, there's a lot of accomplished people here, a lot of people that on paper are doing very well. They are doing very well. Um, but there's something where they're saying, look, I have this other dream. I have this other thing I want to build. And for some, it's a purely financial thing, which is totally fine to say, look, another 5K per month, 10K per month would be a fantastic thing for me and my family. Also said they want to just move away from their current job. But you're obviously afraid of what do people say, right? What do they think if I make this move? Or what if I set up this company and it doesn't do well? Or what if I even just putting the logo together, putting the LinkedIn page together, other people are going to judge me and they're going to probably think that I'm failing in my 9 to 5 because I'm suddenly doing this other thing. What is something you would tell those people? What would you say? What would be the first steps to address and start to crush that fear of ridicule?
Well, my flippant answer as to what I would tell them is fuck them, but a little more nuance than that. The late rapper Nipsey Hussle, he had this quote. He said, "You will never be criticized by someone doing more than you. You will only be criticized by someone doing less than you. Remember that." Anytime I have ever been like, I don't mean like constructive feedback, I mean like criticism, trolling, hate. Anytime that's ever happened, and the few times that I will actually like not engage with it, but like read it and like look at the person's profile or whatever, it's always somebody who's done nothing with their life. Like they're not building anything. They don't have a life I want. They're not somebody I would want to like hang out with around a campfire or something. They're just a miserable person looking for somebody doing something to try to tear down. So when I remind myself of that, of I'm not going to be attacked by, generally speaking, I'm not going to be attacked by somebody I want in my life. Well, if I don't want you in my life, I don't care what you think about me, right? Like if you are not the person I'm trying to serve, if you are not someone who inspires me, if you are not somebody who I live with, I don't care if you like me or don't like me because it doesn't affect me or change the trajectory of what I'm trying to do. Now, if you are somebody I'm trying to serve and clearly something I'm doing isn't landing, I need to figure that out and course correct. Sure. But if you're not my audience, don't care. So that is one piece. I think a lot of us put too much weight into the opinions of strangers to the point that, again, it comes back to like trusting yourself. I write under my own name. One, because it's sort of like a quality control thing of like, do I believe in this enough to put my name behind it? So whether it's a LinkedIn post or a newsletter issue or YouTube video, whatever, my name is on it. But the other thing is, I put out things that I deeply believe should exist in the world. I have conviction that they are worthwhile. That is what matters. Because I study the people I try to serve. I study the people I want to be more like. And then I try to find the value I can put out into the world. If, Harry Ding Dong 69 420 has an issue with me, Harry Ding Dong 420, 69 isn't the guy I'm trying to talk to. He's not the guy I'm trying to serve. Okay. Um, I remember this one woman I worked with, she's an expert, like credentialed 20 plus years in the industry, fitness expert. And she was like, I feel that I have to put on a bunch of makeup in order to do some of these videos because I'm afraid of what guys might say if I don't wear makeup. I'm like, okay, who are the people you're trying to serve? Oh, I'm trying to serve women. Then what the fuck do you care what guys have to say? Right? It doesn't matter. It straight up does not matter because you're not talking to guys. Do the girls care if you wear makeup? She's like, oh no, not at all. How does that even factor into your decisions then? Okay. Because of course, some basement dweller is probably going to say something. Okay, you can't stop that. But what you're currently doing is allowing the potential of that happening to hold you back. When in reality, live your life, serve the people you try to serve. And when this inevitably comes up, it's irrelevant. You're not trying to serve him. It doesn't matter. The other thing, see if I get you in a second because I see your hand. The other thing is like critics, their sole reason for existing is to criticize. No matter how much you care, how much effort you put into something, how good it is, a critic somewhere is going to find it and find fault in it because that's their job, right? Like you can't get mad at a fly for buzzing around a turd. That's what flies do. Can't get mad at them. That's their reason for existing is to eat shit. Trolls, same deal. Steve, what's up? I think you need to unmute.
There we
There we
go.
go.
Right. I'm using my phone and I don't usually use my phone. Um, what you were saying is completely resonating with me, especially because that was point two of the four horsemen, wasn't it? The fear
Ridicule.
of ridicule.
Yeah.
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 Um, and and I'm fine. I'm just in the process of starting a business, a really small business, and this is one that's really, really bothering me, and I can feel it stopping me in lots of different ways. Sometimes it's people that I know or people that I don't know very well. So like it'd be people in the local area. Whereas I'm happy to try and talk to people that I don't know, but I won't want to talk to people in the local area about it. But one of the things I know that I've stopped myself doing recently that I want to do, I see Toby do it a lot on his videos, is talk about his own story. Because I've been advised by lots of people that my own story is what people will buy into. Because my product relates to I'm a stay-at-home dad, and my product is for dads, and that people relate to it. But I keep stopping myself from making these videos and going out there and telling this story. And I just want to know if there's any sort of specific advice you could give to jump over that kind of hurdle.
Yeah. Who are you trying to serve? Why does it matter? Getting really clear on that. So I'll use myself as an example. I thoroughly don't give a shit about what other psychologists think about the content I put out. Okay. So like I've talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs before. Actual psychologists who study that would probably just eviscerate my explanation of it because it wasn't nuanced enough. It wasn't up to date enough. There's all these other things and criticisms and shit that have come out over the last few decades about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I didn't care about that because I was using it just as an example to help people understand why you can have safety and security and money and accolades, but still feel unfulfilled. There's a reason for that. And what all goes into that? That was the point. I don't talk to psychologists So I don't care what psychologists think about my content. Now, don't get me wrong. I have plenty of psychologists who follow me, both because it's refreshing, but also there's psychologists who want to go into coaching or entrepreneurship or something else, and they follow me to kind of see how I do it because they like how I do it, because I do it very authentically. But I never care what they think. For you, man, really getting clear on, why is this the work I feel compelled to do? Why does it matter? And more importantly, what are the consequences of me not doing this? So, this whole idea of like, if not you, then who? So when you identify a need, the fact that you identify that need means it is currently going unserved. Well, then if you don't meet that need continues to exist. That void continues to exist in the world. Well, if I allow self-doubt and fear of ridicule or whatever else to hold me back, I will continue to not put this out there, which means the void continues to happen, which means these people continue to go unhelped, unserved. So really getting clear on like that also really helps me. One of the things, Aaron, then I'll get to you. One of the things, so when I was on Pat Flynn's podcast, Smart Passive Income, one of the things that Pat and I talked about was like stage fright shit, and how, he and I both, obviously Pat more so than me, but like we speak professionally. But every single time, right before I have to go on and talk, whether it is a small call like this or a larger one, hundreds of people, whatever, I have to pee and my hands get sweaty, and just all that happens over and over and over again. And it's just sort of unavoidable. And it's really easy to focus on your own insecurity and like, oh, well, what if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing? What will people think? How will they react? Whatever. What if this joke doesn't land? But a lot of times, insecurity like that is very selfish in that it is self-focused or self-centered. What Pat and I both independently came to was, I focus on what the other people need. Meaning, I get up on the stage to talk about this thing. It's not about my own insecurities of, do I look okay? Am I sounding okay? Whatever. Am I hitting all the words? I think about, why do these people need to hear this message? Why is it important for them to walk away changed? Well, now I'm going from selfish to selfless. And the fact that I switched my focus from myself and my own perceived inadequacies or potential judgments, and I shift it toward, why do these other people need this? How will it help them? All of that insecurity tends to go away because I'm not focusing on myself anymore. So getting really clear on like why you do what you do, how does it help? Who does it serve? What are the consequences of not doing it? That's how you sort of build conviction in what you're doing. And that conviction, rather than like courage or confidence or bravery or all this shit, like conviction of like, this needs to exist. This is important. This has positive ripple effects. This is what I feel deeply needs to be put out into the world, and I'm the person to do it. That for me will help you weather all the storms of like insecurity and shit. Does that make sense? Cool. Aaron, what's up?
Yeah, so thanks. This has been great. My problem kind of goes with your fear and procrastination side of things. I've been in operations and management and all that for over 20 years. I'm confident that I know things, right? Like I know I can help people, but then at the same time, I feel like I don't know enough to help people. And so that's the fear I have in reaching out and going out to go to go to somebody and offer my help, is like, well, what do I have to offer? Right? Like I have that fear, and so then that fear turns into procrastinating the calls, to take action, to do the follow-ups, and all that stuff. So I don't know, maybe you can help me figure out like how do I get over that fear of thinking I don't know enough to help somebody, because I'm not this like niche guy that has like this specific IT, thing. I have a broad knowledge of things, and so I feel like You see what I'm saying? How do I get
For
over
sure.
that fear?
So that's kind of getting into um, imposter syndrome, or how a lot of people describe imposter syndrome, right? Of like, who am I to do this? What if I don't know enough? What if, I don't have enough value to kind of give? Um, Imposter syndrome fundamentally is a belief that you don't belong in the room, whatever that room is. So that room may be a physical room, it may be a virtual room, it may be a conceptual room of like, oh, if I write a book, my book doesn't deserve to be on the shelf with these other books, right? I don't, I don't belong offering these services because there's so many other people who maybe they're better at it. When I was in grad school, we did this homeless outreach event where in December, so it was super, super cold. It was like freezing, sub-freezing temperatures. Us, the schools of like nursing, pharmacy, medicine, a bunch of other schools, we all got together in like the back parking lot of a church and offered services to people experiencing homelessness. So like they could get like medical checkups, prescriptions if they needed them, food, clothing, all sorts of shit. And I remember walking up as like a psychology student, like a therapist, and I was like, these people are fighting for their lives. They like to survive. Like they don't need smoking cessation techniques. They don't need fucking deep breathing exercises. And I went up to two of my supervisors who between them had like 50 years of experience. And I said, when does this feeling like I don't know what the hell I'm doing go away? And they looked at each other and they said, we'll let you know. Meaning, even they, top of their field, combined 50 years of experience, still felt like they were just winging it. Okay. From that moment, I've never had imposter syndrome again. In that, I continue to feel that tension of like, oh, this is a new area. Oh, I don't know if I belong here. Oh, I don't, whatever. But it is an imposter syndrome in the way that it holds me back. Now I see it as what I call liminal tension. So liminal just means like the space between spaces, like a hallway is a liminal space between two rooms. Anytime you venture into a new room, a new arena, a new business, a new anything, there's this tension of, I haven't been here before. Maybe I don't belong. What is on the other side of this? But that tension is actually proof you are entering a growth zone, right? You've heard this cliche of like everything you want on the other side of your comfort zone or some shit. It's true though, because this tension you feel, most people see as a sign to back off of like, oh, there's tension here. Like I'm pushing against it. Oh, okay. I don't need to go there. I don't belong in that room. That's a new room. I don't belong there. But in order to grow, you actually have to lean into that of like, hey, I'm going to make this offer and figure it out. Because if this person says, yes, they want to work with me, this is new territory. I don't know what this is going to look like, but this is going to force me to grow. And I have told myself I want to grow. The only way that I grow is leaning into this liminal tension that I'm feeling rather than being held back by imposter syndrome. So it is okay that you don't know, that you feel like you don't know what you're doing. One, because you're sitting on tons of experience. You can probably figure it out. But also, you know a lot more than you're probably giving yourself credit for in these situations. Again, I'll use myself as an example. I remember early on when I started coaching, people were paying. So the price I charged initially, I thought was like too much money. It was like way more than I ever made as a therapist. I was like, this is an insane amount of money. And like the third client, I closed, he laughed in my face. He was like, I thought you were going to charge triple that. He was like, this is like suspiciously low. I was like, really? And then I started working with more and more people. And I was like, I'm just a poor kid. This person is paying me an insane amount of money. Who would ever pay me this much money to just sit and talk to me for an hour? And like now, like I work off of like a monthly retainer. Like currently, like my standard rate is $3,500 a month for 4 hour long sessions a month, like one a week. There's a little bit of like flexibility there, but that's the standard rate. That's stupid money for me. Like from my perspective, like who would pay me $3,500 for 4 hours of my time? It's $875 an hour. The most I ever made as a therapist was $50 an hour. Like that's an absolutely insane amount of money. But every single time people are like, dude, this was incredible. I've even had people that are like 30 minutes in, they're like, I got exactly what I needed. I'm good to leave. I'm like, but you have another 30 minutes. They're like, I didn't pay for 60 minutes. I paid for transformation. You help me get that transformation in 30 minutes. I don't give a shit about the other 30. I don't need to run out the clock. Okay. But there was this like, this person is this huge name, this best-selling author, or this big time founder or whatever, and they're paying me to talk to me. What the fuck could I possibly offer this person? Way more than you think you can. Okay. But the other thing is like, people don't pay me to like help them scale their companies, in that they're not paying me for like ops stuff. They're paying me to help them identify and remove the like bottlenecks and like the psychological mindset side. Right. It's like, well, if you're a founder making $20 million a year top, in revenue, identifying one self-sabotaging behavior, or like helping you learn to trust your team better, so now you delegate more effectively, that unlocks way more revenue than you're going to be, paying me month to month. Okay. So you have way more value to give than maybe you're giving yourself credit for.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. I like that. I resonate with that imposter syndrome. I do. I feel that way, definitely going into something. And so that's great. Thank you.
Nobody knows what they're doing. Not fully. The only people who tell you they fully know what they're doing are full of shit and selling you snake oil. Like, nobody fully knows what they're doing. Everybody, to some degree, is winging it.
Very good. Very good reminder. I think there's a ton here which, I think could be thanks, Amanda. A ton here that can be kind of tied together, but let me just start with Steve. Like, the thing that Corey, I give you a bit of feedback, input here from Steve, also what he's doing. So Aaron kind of described obviously what he's doing. He's got the experience, and that's quite clear. Steve has created products, or is creating products for dads, so like backpacks and rucksacks that are made for men, rather than kind of mum bag that they otherwise carry around, and all of that stuff. The thing is, Steve, if you hadn't had that idea, that physical bag wouldn't be sitting in my living room packed with stuff for my kids tomorrow, right? It just wouldn't be there. So I would either use my wife's bag or another bag, but actually your bag is fantastic. So, and the reason I'm saying that is, so two things. One is, but for more people to get to that, your story is essential. That's what Corey was saying as well, right? Your story, because Corey's story is essential. Having his backstory to who he is, how he grew up, all the changes he's made, makes us relate to him. Because, there's somebody who came from a certain background, identified in a certain way, talked to himself in a certain way, and has transformed that whole narrative. That hopefully helps you see, like, you can do the same, right? And then the other thing I would say is use this group, all of you, use this group to kind of mirror to each other that you have a lot of worth to give, because I think we're always thinking small. I mean, again, on the weekend, I spoke to a few guys who they got a business. One guy got a business consultant in, and he asked for a refund fairly enough, because it was a £4,000, which is what, like $5,000 per day, business consultant per day. And the advice from that person boiled down into saying, if you if you either lower your costs or you increase your price, you grow your margin, which is what you need to do. I'm not sure that's worth really $4,000 a day, but well, £4,000. But anyway, if these people exist, then you guys, if you're an authentic and integral person, then you guys will be fine.
Yeah, one of the people I worked with recently, she big time professional working on starting up her own business and things. And she said she did some, what was it, Daniel Priestley or something, like big time entrepreneur kind of
Awesome
guy.
guy.
Okay, well, she did wait for it. She did one of his trainings and like worked with him. And she said one thing he told her was, to just quit her job and go full on her business. And it was like, maybe she didn't give me more context. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but she was like, that wasn't what I needed to do. And it was like this just like very like prescriptive thing sometimes that other people do. And you know, like, well, like with Daniel, like maybe it works for a lot of his people, but there are, and him aside, there are many people who give very prescriptive, very absolutist, or shit you could have Googled, right? Of like, oh, here's how to, you know, improve your top line revenue, cut costs. That I could have Googled that, right? One of the things I tell my clients is you don't have simple problems anymore because you are intelligent enough that if you had a simple problem, you would have already solved it. So all you're left with are deeply complex existential problems. How do I give myself permission to do the thing I want to do? How do I even identify the thing I actually want to do? What is actually holding me back? What is my relationship with success? What is the identity I know I need to cultivate in order to succeed in this next chapter of my life or my business? Those are very existential. Again, like one of the guys I'm working with, a big thing is like trust. And he's like, why don't I trust my staff? He's like, I have 40, 50 people. I hired the best, yet I still don't trust them. Why? I was like, well, one of the reasons is fundamentally you don't trust yourself. And this isn't me telling him this is like what came up. Fundamentally, you don't trust yourself. And because you don't trust yourself, you don't trust other people. So before we fuck with like all this like team dynamic shit, how do you learn to trust yourself first? Because then everything else is downstream of that. That's really hard because you've got 40 plus years learning not to trust yourself. You cannot expect in a week to suddenly magically 100% trust yourself. That's going to take time. That's complicated. That's existential. There's a lot that goes into it. Okay. So yeah, like if you ever hire somebody who tells you some shit you could have Googled, that ain't it.
Fair enough. I would still say, Steve and Aaron as well. Um, there's an episode of it's called the High Performance Podcast with Daniel Priestley. It's a great episode. He doesn't sell anything on the episode, so maybe that's why. But anybody interested in business, it's an episode worthwhile listening to for sure.
You know, I've seen and hear good things about Daniel. Like, I'm not trying to talk shit about Daniel. He could be totally good dude. I'd love to meet him.
Yeah.
But it was a recent thing. Someone was like, he told me to just like fully quit my job and just go all in on this business. And I don't think that's what I need to do.
Oh, very good. Right, Corey. I'm aware of the time, and I want to also respect your time. And you've been very busy already today. So I'm going to wrap it up here. But do you want to maybe just leave us with where to find more about what you do, how to follow more of you, and your writing?
Sure. So, like you all see in like the Zoom thing, Corey Wilks Psy.D, that is where I am everywhere. My doctorate is a Psy.D, a doctor of psychology. So I am Corey Wilks Psy.D, everywhere. So like CoreyWilksPsyD.com is my website. You can look through articles, you subscribe to the newsletter if you want, look out, check out my community if you ever want to join it. All my shit is right there. I am more active on LinkedIn these days. And again, it's just Corey Wilks Psy.D, easy to find. I'm on other platforms, but I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. So if you all have any other follow-up questions or want to know other stuff of what I do, feel free to hit me up. But yeah, Corey Wilks Psy.D everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. I've had many conversations with you, and every time I leave the conversation uplifted, I learned more, and more importantly, I need to spend time with pen and paper and think more about myself.
Thanks for having me out, man.
Thank you.
And I'm always down to come back or help with anything else. So just keep me posted. Happy to
We
help
will
however I can.
definitely will take you up on that. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye. Day 2